Are there any particular days you remember working here that stand out?
Well, I've only been here a short period of time, and every single day is different. So there are loads, but I don't want to pick out what I don't want to pick one in particular because I have to start naming people's names and things like that.
Just leaving names off.
Put me on the spot now. We've produced some of our artisan academy designers have designed and produced some phenomenal pieces of furniture, and we produced a very large French style farmhouse table, which was about 2.5-3 meters long, and it was absolutely stunning piece of work. We did it as an individual commission, and I thought to be able to make that out of completely recycled material, I think it was completely made of scaffold boards, and to the level of quality of finish made by people based within a mile of this building. I thought that was stunning. That was one of the reasons I decided to join, because I love the idea of people using their hands to produce things. It's very rarely that people can get the chance to make things with their hands these days. Everybody sits in front of a computer and designs things, but they don't do things with their hands. And from a personal point of view, I lost the use of my hands for about 6 months due to a thing called peripheral neuropathy, which was a side effect of chemotherapy after the second time I had cancer when I was about 20. So using your hands became quite interesting because I lost the use of mine. I used to play golf for a living and I couldn't hit golf balls anymore, and I used to paint and I couldn't paint anymore. So the idea of not being able to use your hands suddenly became very important to me. And so to working with an organisation where you're teaching people how to use their hands creatively, how to turn waste material into something beautiful, probably is the reason I'm here today.
I think we'll probably all guess the answer to this, but it would be good to hear you say it. The using recycled material, why do you do that as opposed to just buying normal wood?
Oh, I think it's fundamental to we live in a society that throws things away. I used to be in the DIY industry for 30 odd years, and we dealt with manufacturers who deliberately made products that couldn't be repaired, that couldn't be taken apart. And we now, as an advance of that, we now waste so much of our resources. It's got to be scandalous. If we can save, we've so far this year, I think, saved about in the last couple of years, about 120 tonnes of material from going into landfill. That's got to be good for the economy, the ecology anyway. But the economy is based around actually throwing things away because it's cheaper than actually saving them. And I think that's an appalling idea. Trees, particularly, are a resource that should be looked after, especially in cities. And to just waste things like timber is, I think, scandalous.
Just going back, Alois, to what you were talking about earlier, can you tell us about any changes that, or any days, that you would have stood out to you when you were kind of walking around with your granddad around here?
Oh, definitely. I mean, when I was a kid, if you walked along the canal, you could virtually walk across it because there was so much pollution in there. You never ever saw a boat. You virtually never saw anybody walking down it. There was no wildlife. There was no fish. In the 20, 30 years that I've been walking up and down that, it's now become almost a haven. There are loads of boats, people living on them, people enjoying being on the canal. The water is so much cleaner now. It might not look it, but compared when it would spontaneously ignite in different places because there was such high levels of petrol and chemicals being dumped in them. Now, it's all being looked after. People use it as a cycle path. You see people walking up and down, enjoying it. Where there's space, they're turning those into gardens or walk areas. So what was basically a liquid industrial slum has now become almost an extra lung for this part of London. Maybe the canal is going to compensate for the Westway. But yes, there's huge changes on that. And people are actually interested in it. 25 years ago when they started redeveloping the canal, making it cleaner again, people showing an interest. You were considered freaky if you went out on a weekend and wanted to help unblock a canal or cut back all the overgrown brambles. Now, it's I think it's a major reason for living here. I mean, people love living next to water anyway because it's calming. I know I wander down there and sit by the canal for 5 minutes at lunchtime when I get a chance. And I think we should make more of that. And if we could have more parks down the side of that, even better.
And were you at all involved in that process?
No, not at all. It's terrible. I watched other people doing it, and I walked along it once they'd done it. And I've always loved the idea of living on a boat. Funny enough, there's 2 or 3 of our associates, a couple of academy designers and one of our second-year trainee all live on boats on different parts of the canal, and I think it's a wonderful place, a wonderful way of living. And yeah, I'd like to do that.
Just to jump back a bit, do you know how it is, because I know you've only been here for 5 months, but how it is that the business finished up being in this location, in this building?
I think they approached the council, and the council said, it's a nice idea, but we know where you're going to put you. And Ollie and Marie came up with a business plan that needed to be in the middle of a community. So it was a matter of finding an area where you had a need and a space that they could use. And this had been empty for about 3-4 years. And I think the council said, well, if you can do something with that, we might be able to help you. I think they jumped at the fact because of where it is, it suited the ethos of being right in the middle of a community rather than being stuck on an industrial estate in a warehouse, which would be the normal way of looking at it, somewhere out the way where we can make some noise and nobody will notice. So I think it was fortuitous that they got off the building in a place they'd like to have been. And they live local anyway. I mean, they're only about 1.5 miles down the road, like most of the people. I travel the furthest, so.
And it's called the Goldfinger Factory.
Yeah, Erno Goldfinger obviously built the building. It's an iconic landmark, and the idea of using that name, I think, just fitted in. There's a lot about Erno that was very much in, although it's very modern and sometimes misused brutalist building, which I think is just another word for honest. But he wanted to build a vertical community. And I think what's happened is over the last couple of years, that sense of community has come back. And I think things like social enterprises and Goldfinger in particular, like the idea that a community based organisation in a building that was designed to create new communities.
And what is it that leads you to say that you feel that sense of community is coming back?
Just the number of people we deal with. It amazes me. We run a community kitchen every third Sunday, and we get 40 or 50 people from the local area, and just getting to talk to each other, learning to eat healthy food. Certainly where I live, there's no sense of community anymore. It's become, people have just shut themselves into their houses and nobody wants to go out. There's I think because of the diversity of nationalities and cultures, some cultures are much more interactive than others, and I think that rubs off onto everybody. And if you've got a hub where people can come and feel comfortable and they can just talk to their friends or sit in a cafe and have a cup of coffee and think about what they're going to do, I think that helps. And just a number of people who come through the door with ideas and things that they'd like to do, I think definitely is a sense of community. It's certainly the most community I've ever lived in or been involved with.
One, I think, last question, but again, without mentioning any names, but are you able to could you give us any, how can I put it, stories of individuals that you've worked with, young people that you've worked with, and how perhaps being involved with this project has changed them or given them more opportunities?
I mean, the obvious ones are the academy trainees. Both of those came from difficult backgrounds. We've managed to find them sponsorship. We worked, when we decided to set up the programme, the idea of being interviewed was always going to be a no-no. With so many groups involved, us and the sponsors, the idea of sitting in front of half a dozen people, firing questions at them was a complete nonsense, because we knew what the background was coming from. So we set up, everybody who applied had a 1 week training, on the job training session, which we paid them to do. And the idea of that was that some of them were very shy, some are very quiet, some have come from backgrounds where they don't trust people. But once we already knew that through volunteering that they had an interest in woodworking or working with their hands. And when you work with somebody for a week, you get to know if they're the person that is going to actually find something from a program like that. And the two people who ended up being chosen by the sponsors, because it's ultimately down to them, it's their money, so they get to choose the people. I think we will change their lives, because they not only change in the skill sets that they're learning on a practical basis, but they change as individuals because they become more confident in themselves. They suddenly realise they have got opportunities, they have got abilities, they have got a future. And that changes the way that you behave, that changes the way you interact with other people. You learn to work as a team member, and you develop as a human being. And I think there's a large problem with that with some of the youngsters who are coming out of schools and colleges. They miss a big chunk of that. So that's probably the thing I'm most proud about, that we will be able to change those people's lives. And we're not just making money like a lot of apprenticeship programs in construction are, just for finding somebody else's place that in 6 months' time will disappear and they just get a piece of paper that says they've done a training course or a so-called apprenticeship. Ultimately, at the end of this, we want them to be able to stay with us, and they become second-year trainees, and they then become the mentors for the next generation. And they will continue to develop their skills. If they find another job with another employer or a company we work with, just as happy with that. But we would love them to stay with us, because it's easier for youngsters to pass information to youngsters rather than having boring old farts like me telling them, you should be lucky, you should be glad you're here because this is really, really good.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.